Pensive, sorrowful, and deeply reflective are the emotions that washed over me. After researching and learning about more than 100 Black public figures connected to the quiet hidden corners of the music industry, where the most brilliant talents were besieged by prejudice in one of the cruelest pandemics in medical history. Hello everyone, we are our Memory Vault, and this is the video 23 Black Gay R&B legends who died from HIV/AIDS. This greatly impacts how we view the price of silence and the unspeakable pain of artists, and it might just leave you stunned. This video is perfect to play while you are resting, enjoying a meal with your family, or doing chores around the house. All the information in this video has been carefully researched and gathered from multiple sources. If there are any oversights, please leave a comment below to help our channel continue to grow. Please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and ring the notification bell to receive updates on our latest videos. Now let us step right into the stories of our first figures. Aretha Franklin. Opening our list today, we must mention Aretha Franklin, the immortal queen of soul of our time. Although she was not a victim of the epidemic of the century, her artistic life was tied to an era where countless colleagues, friends, and silent collaborators fell to it. Aretha possessed a voice like a gift from God, capable of healing the deepest wounds in the soul. She grew up from the cradle of hymns where music was salvation, but it was also in that conservative environment that many young talents with different sexual orientations had to learn to hide themselves to be accepted by society. Let us analyze the internal struggle of someone standing at the peak of glory while witnessing the passing of soulmates. James Cleveland. A gospel legend and a spiritual teacher who had a massive influence on Aretha, silently endured hidden corners regarding his sexuality and health until his final days. Having to maintain the standard image of a queen while simultaneously carrying deep empathy for colleagues who were day and night facing the boundary between life and death was an invisible but immense psychological burden. She sang about freedom, about respect, but all around her, the very people making that magnificent music were being stripped of their freedom to be themselves. I assess that the greatness of Aretha Franklin does not only lie in her masterful vocal technique or prestigious awards, but it lies in her tolerant heart. In the years when society still turned its back on those carrying the epidemic, her music remained a warm embrace holding lonely souls. Although Aretha lived a full, glorious human life, her presence in this historical context is proof that pandemics of prejudice and disease not only take the lives of those afflicted, but they also leave a permanent void, a lingering pain in the hearts of those left behind, those who always use their voices to pray for the tolerance of humanity. Little Richard. Next is Little Richard, the great architect who laid the first bricks to build the rock and roll empire. With his frantic performance style, sparkling outfits, sharp makeup, and a demeanor that broke all conventional gender norms, he forever changed the face of popular music. He was a direct inspiration for brilliant artists later on, like Billy Wright, an R&B legend who quietly passed away from severe illness. However, behind the explosion and liberation on stage, Little Richard's life was the fiercest arena between his natural self and the strict religious dogmas he was raised with from childhood. Through the lens of religious psychology analysis, the contradiction within Little Richard was a tragedy of the era. Throughout his life, he constantly wavered between living true to his real self and denying himself to seek peace in religion. He once threw wide open the door to freedom for an entire generation of artists who dared to break gender barriers, yet repeatedly locked himself in torment, condemning the very things he had done. I believe that this is a deep pain that many Black artists had to bear. They yearned to dedicate themselves fully to art, but were always haunted by the fear of being abandoned by their community and the Supreme Being. To audiences who have experienced the torment between duty and personal desire, Little Richard's journey carries a deeply reflective resonance. Although he did not face the cruel physical disease of the 80s, he had to fight another even more persistent disease: the judgment of his own conscience caused by imposed social prejudices. His life is a multicolored picture, but also carries many dark patches. It teaches us that freeing a person from the chains of public opinion is sometimes even harder than creating a revolution in music. His legacy is great, But the tears hidden in that internal struggle are what truly makes the world bow its head in sorrow. The internal struggle of Little Richard is already a sorrow, but the extreme loneliness hidden behind the romantic love songs of the next legend will leave you feeling even more lingering pain. Do not take your eyes off the screen, because the most poignant stories are still waiting ahead. Luther Vandross. In the third position is Luther Vandross, the man possessing a voice as smooth as velvet, the absolute symbol of romance in R&B music. His love songs have become the soundtrack for millions of love stories, weddings, and the most transcendent moments of human life. Anyone who listens to Luther's music can feel a heart overflowing with emotion and a fierce desire for love. Yet there is an incredibly bitter paradox. The man who spent his entire youth singing about romantic happiness carried a quiet loneliness, a personal life closed off to the point of mystery, and never truly belonged to anyone. Let us analyze the pressure of having to maintain an image in the entertainment industry. In Luther's era, for a black male singer to build a masculine, elegant, and charming image in the eyes of female audiences was a vital factor to ensure commercial revenue. Any deviation from gender norms could kill a career at its peak. His absolute silence about his private life sparked countless rumors, but Luther chose to smile in silence. I empathize with that silence. Having to hide personal desires, unable to freely hold his lover's hand while walking down the street, was a far too expensive price he had to pay for fame. Those internal struggles seemingly eroded his health, manifesting in constant weight fluctuations and blood pressure issues, leading to a highly regrettable passing due to stroke complications rather than the infectious disease of the era. To audiences who have tasted the feeling of being lonely in a crowd, Luther Vandross's story is a melancholic love song. He brought joy to tens of thousands of people, but kept the darkest part for himself. It reminds us that behind the smoothest melodies are sometimes unfillable voids. His brilliant career is an eternal monument, but his loneliness is also an eternal sad low note in music history. Eazy-E. Next is Eazy-E, a name that completely changed the landscape of the world music scene in his role as the godfather of gangsta rap. He was the embodiment of rebellion, grit, defiance, and represented the edgiest masculine model of the streets. His music contained fierceness, strength, and a refusal to ever bow down. In the subconscious of millions of fans, a leader like Eazy-E was invincible. Because of this, when news broke that he was hospitalized for respiratory symptoms and later announced he was in the final stages of AIDS, the entire hip-hop world seemed to experience an unprecedented shockwave. Through the lens of sociological analysis, the passing of Eazy-E in early 1995 carried a massive awakening significance. Prior to this, a large part of the public still held a misguided and highly prejudiced belief that this epidemic of the century only targeted a small group of people with different sexual orientations. The fact that a symbol of street masculinity fell to this disease shattered all illusions and complacency. I highly admire Eazy-E's bravery in his final days. Instead of hiding in shame, he used his fading breath to send a warning message to millions of young men, advising them to be careful and know how to protect their own lives. The image of the king of rap lying weakly on a hospital bed surrounded by life support equipment is a choking contrast to the days he stood at the peak of power. To audiences who always value health, this event is a costly lesson about the fragility of human life. No amount of money, no fame can bribe the laws of nature. His rapid passing not only closed a glorious chapter of music, but it also opened a new era of awareness, forcing society as a whole to look at this pandemic more seriously, more humanely, and with less callous judgment. Mahalia Jackson. Closing this first segment is Mahalia Jackson, universally honored as the Queen of Gospel. Her singing was not just music, it was a spiritual power that accompanied the historical progress of the great civil rights movements. She was the one who added strength to the speeches of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and her singing rang out like a firm belief in a brighter tomorrow. However, behind the majesty and standard of a religious icon, Mahalia also represented an environment that inadvertently created the silence and hidden pains of many artists on this list. Let us analyze the dual nature of the conservative religious environment in history. The church is a place that nurtures talent, the cradle for great voices to take flight. But at the same time, the strict dogmas there were a suffocating barrier for artists carrying gender differences. Choir leaders and talented musicians had to force themselves to live under a mask to protect their positions. I assess that Mahalia Jackson, with her compassionate heart, could love everyone, but the system she represented did not allow that tolerance to spread completely. Her passing before the epidemic broke out meant she did not have to witness her students fall, but she lived fully during the era when the seeds of that prejudice were sown. For audiences who have pondered how to balance faith and human empathy, the historical context of Mahalia Jackson brings profound reflection. We honor the great spiritual legacy she left behind, but simultaneously realize that no environment is perfect. It was precisely from within that strictness and conformity that artists had to find their own ways to liberate themselves, even if sometimes the price paid was absolute silence when facing death. Mahalia's singing points people toward the light, but the hidden corners behind the pulpit always remain a large question mark about compassion and acceptance in human society. The tolerance of Mahalia Jackson is a bright torch, but the cruel turning of backs that society gave to a horn of freedom right up next is truly a profound wake-up call. Please continue to accompany us to uncover these haunting hidden corners. Fela Kuti. Moving to the 6th position, we look back at the life of Fela Kuti, a Nigerian music legend, the man hailed as the father of the Afrobeat genre. But Fela was not just a musician, he was also a steadfast political activist, a true warrior, using music as a weapon to fight against injustice and tyranny. Throughout his life, he faced countless suppressions, prison sentences, and the harshest trials to protect the ideal of freedom for his people. In the eyes of millions of fans, Fela Kuti was an uncollapsible fortress, a great hero who never knew how to bow his head. Yet the greatest tragedy of human life is the finiteness of the physical body. When information that his health was depleting due to complications from the epidemic of the century was announced by his own older brother, an entire nation seemed to fall into a state of shock and denial. Through the lens of mob psychology analysis, people often refuse to accept that their idol, someone so strong, could fall to a disease carrying so much stigma at the time. I am deeply saddened to realize the fragile boundary between greatness and the mortal nature of human beings. Fela could defeat tangible oppressive forces, but was completely powerless before the natural laws of life and death. The final period of his life is a choking contrast. The man who once stood amidst a sea of people chanting messages of justice ultimately had to face death in a terrifyingly quiet silence. To you, the audience who have witnessed the cruelty of time upon those you respect, the passing of Fela Kuti is a profound lesson in humanity. It reminds us that behind the cloak of a hero, they also carry a vulnerable flesh and blood body. The fact that the disease took his life does not diminish the greatness of the legacy he left behind. It only adds to the sorrow for a human life that burned intensely for humanity, but departed in the helplessness of the medicine of its era. Alvin Ailey. Continuing the list is Alvin Ailey, one of the greatest choreographers of the 20th century, who used body language to honor the beauty history and deepest aspirations of the Black community. The dance company bearing his name became a global phenomenon, bringing stories of endurance and the thirst for freedom to the most prestigious academic stages. He was a man who worshipped the beauty of the human physical form, using it to convey powerful spiritual messages. However, the ultimate irony of fate struck the very thing he cherished most. His body began to betray him as he entered his 50s. Let us analyze the internal struggle of an artist who must hide physical pain when receiving the diagnosis that he was carrying. The epidemic of the century, Alvin Ailey fell into a state of panic regarding his honor. In an 80s society still rife with stigma, publicizing his illness not only threatened his personal image, but also risked collapsing an entire dance academy bearing his name. I deeply empathize with his decision to demand that the doctor keep this secret. Having to brace himself to appear strong, hiding his depletion behind the stage lights was a horrific mental torture for a sensitive artistic soul. The passing of Alvin Ailey, covered up under a generic medical cause, is a sad rest note of history. He spent his entire life telling the stories of others through free dance steps, but could not freely tell the story of his own life in his final days. To audiences who always value authenticity, the tragedy of Alvin Ailey is a heartbreaking testament to the invisible pressure of public opinion. It reminds us of the cruelty of prejudice, the thing that forced a genius to carry heavy secrets down to the very bottom of his grave, simply out of fear that the world would judge him with a different eye. Gil Scott-Heron. In the 8th position is Gil Scott-Heron, honored as one of the most profoundly influential poets and musicians, considered the one who laid the foundation for modern rap music. His classic work, The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, was not just a song, but a powerful manifesto, awakening the awareness of an entire generation about social justice. He used words sharp as knives to dissect the illnesses of American society. Yet while tirelessly striving to heal the community, he let himself get lost in a dark maze of negative habits and a loss of control in his personal life. Through the lens of analyzing the dual nature of genius minds, the life of Gil Scott-Heron is a series of heart-wrenching contradictions. His ability to see through human life seemed to bring him ultimate loneliness, causing him to turn to misguided escapes to soothe mental pressures. When his immune system was broken down and the epidemic of the century silently gnawed at his body, he chose to live reclusively, refusing medical intervention for a long time. I assess that this avoidance stemmed from a deep inferiority complex, the fear of when a symbol of intellectual strength is viewed as weak and diseased. The decline of Gil Scott-Heron is a harsh warning that no one is immune to the risks of life, no matter how transcendent an intellect they possess. To the audience who has witnessed the downfall of those they admire, his story leaves an unceasing regret. He spent his entire youth calling for people to awaken, but closed his eyes and ignored the cries for help of his own body. His intellectual legacy will forever remain a priceless asset, but his quiet end at the hospital is also painful proof that sometimes the greatest enemy of an artist is not society, but the unhealed dark corners inside their own soul. Sylvester. Moving to the 9th position, we meet one of the most brilliant and courageous figures of the disco era, Sylvester. In an era where gender differences were still a taboo, Sylvester stepped onto the stage like a blazing fire. With a soaring falsetto voice, glamorous dresses, and a highly haughty performance demeanor, he didn't just sing, he was making a manifesto about the right to be oneself. The hit You Make Me Feel Mighty Real was not just a song for dancing, it was the anthem of personal liberation. Sylvester never intended to hide himself. He faced the world with an authenticity that was almost abrasive. Let us analyze the attitude of a cultural warrior facing illness. When the pandemic swept through the community and Sylvester himself could not escape its devastation, the way he faced death was completely different from the silence of many colleagues. Despite his health severely declining, he refused to be treated like a pitiable patient. I highly admire that towering self-respect. His speaking up to protect those in the same situation and deciding to wear the most glamorous purple outfit at his own funeral was a hugely symbolic act. It was a proud challenge directed at death and societal prejudices. The passing of Sylvester did not carry a pessimistic, mournful tone. It carried an epic resonance to audiences who always cherish courage and authenticity. Sylvester is a brilliant lighthouse. He proved to the world that true freedom is not just about how you live, but also about how you choose to face the end. Broadcasting stations might refuse to play his music, conservative parishes might refuse to hold services for him, but the thousands of candles lit by fans spoke volumes. Sylvester departed, but his flame of freedom and unquenchable pride will forever illuminate future generations. James Cleveland. Closing this second segment is James Cleveland, an untouchable monument revered as the king of modern gospel music. His music was a spiritual medicine that saved and uplifted the faith of millions every weekend. He was also a great teacher who guided countless legendary voices out into the light. In the religious and artistic community, James Cleveland held an exclusive status representing sanctity, majesty, and the highest moral standards. Looked at from the outside, his life was a journey of tireless dedication to the supreme being and art. However, through the lens of analyzing the weight of dogmas, the final years of James Cleveland's life were surrounded by shocking rumors and secrets. Although he officially passed away due to complications related to heart and respiratory failure, the subsequent legal lawsuits and media whispers exposed a harsh, hidden corner about a romantic life that had to be hidden in the dark. I feel deeply saddened thinking about this circumstance. Having to stand on the pulpit singing hymns about salvation while personally carrying an ultimate fear of judgment from the very community one is serving is an incredibly massive psychological tragedy. The silence of colleagues and the distancing of some religious organizations after he passed away is a clear testament to the harshness of prejudice. To audiences carrying deep empathy within them, the story of James Cleveland opens up a space full of reflection on true compassion. No matter what secrets his personal life held, the musical legacy he left for humanity is an undeniable truth. It reminds us that great people also carry earthly dark corners and unspeakable pains. His music still rings out in cathedrals, but his quiet loneliness in his final days will always remain a major question about acceptance and love between human beings. Jermaine Stewart. Moving to the 11th position, we look back at the life of Jermaine Stewart, a vocalist who once stormed the charts in the 80s. His resounding hit carrying the message, "We don't have to take our clothes off to have a good time," became a cultural phenomenon. In an era where the music industry often used sex appeal to attract attention, Jermaine's message pointed people toward pure values, honoring soulful connection rather than momentary desires. On screen, he always appeared with a radiant smile and positive energy. Yet behind that brightness was a highly private personal life, heavily burdened with anxieties. Let us analyze the psychological struggle of an artist carrying a secret amidst a storm of stigma. When realizing his health was declining day by day, instead of seeking modern medical facilities, Jermaine chose to retreat into the shadows, desperately seeking folk remedies. This evasion did not stem from a lack of knowledge. It originated from an ultimate fear. Fear of being labeled, fear of the scrutinizing eyes of the world, and fear that the name Jermaine Stewart would be forever linked to a disease full of prejudice. For someone who always praised pure love, being judged by society regarding his lifestyle was a blow too heavy to bear. The quiet passing of Jermaine at a hospital in Chicago without any official farewell to the public is a sorrowful low note. To audiences who always value tolerance, his story brings a poignant lesson about the cruelty of public opinion. Jermaine bravely sang about a pure love, but lacked the courage to live true to himself simply because society at the time was not ready to accept him. The legacy he left behind is not only a timeless hit, but also an agonizing question. How long will it be before humans stop using prejudices to push fragile souls into ultimate loneliness? Bobby DeBarge. In the 12th position is Bobby DeBarge, the talented leader of the band Switch, in a great piece of the legendary DeBarge musical dynasty. Possessing a soaring tenor voice full of melancholy and mesmerism, Bobby once made millions of hearts throb through poignant love songs. He was the embodiment of an innate genius, a sensitive soul always yearning to be loved. However, behind the brilliant halo, Bobby's life was a series of tragic downfalls as he continuously turned to negative habits to escape the massive pressures of fame and deep traumas from his childhood. Through the lens of analyzing humanity in adversity, the story of Bobby's diagnosis is one of the saddest hidden corners. For a star who once stood at the peak to receive an invisible death sentence in a harsh correctional environment lacking specialized medical care and the comfort of loved ones is a pain that cannot be described in words. I am deeply pained to assess that the system at the time inadvertently abandoned misguided individuals. Illness does not discriminate, but the way society and the system treat those carrying the disease contained far too much coldness and judgment. When returning to his family in his final years, the image of Bobby trying to raise his voice to sing but no longer having enough strength is a choking metaphor for the fading of a star. To audiences who have witnessed the downward slide of great talents, The life of Bobby DeBarge brings a profound reflection on compassion. Musical talent could not save him from the dark corners of his soul, and society's indifference stripped him of his last chance to be healed. Bobby departed, but his voice full of struggle will always remain a reminder that a genius also needs to be shielded not only with applause, but with the very tolerance of fellow human beings. Michael Jeter. Continuing the list is Michael Jeter, one of the most talented and charming theatrical and cinematic actors. Not possessing a dazzlingly handsome exterior, Michael conquered global audiences with his subtlety, gentle eyes, and the ability to deliver humorous acting that carried deep inner depth. From roles on the Broadway stage to the big screen, he always brought a warm energy source, dispelling the sorrows of viewers. Everyone thought that a person capable of bringing so many laughs must surely have an incredibly peaceful life. Yet behind the makeup and the radiant smile was a life-or-death battle lasting more than a decade that he kept hidden from the media. Let us analyze the life philosophy of a person carrying the mission of bringing joy. Upon discovering he was carrying a terminal illness instead of collapsing or seeking pity, Michael Jeter made a highly courageous decision. He used work as a shield. Refusing to let illness define him is the highest expression of professional self-respect. I highly value this resilience. He did not want the audience to see him through the lens of a patient waiting for the end. He only wanted them to remember him as an artist who had fully dedicated his most quintessential acting nuances right up until his very last breath. The gentle explanations about his fatigue merely being allergies on set showed a subtlety and a silent sacrifice by him so as not to affect the progress of the team. To audiences who always value diligent workers, the image of Michael Jeter commands ultimate respect. Sometimes the people with the most radiant smiles are the ones carrying the heaviest burdens. His career proves a truth. True art has the power to rise above even physical pain. He spent his whole life being a clown, bringing happiness to the world, and quietly bore ultimate loneliness behind the stage lights. Howard Rollins. In the 14th position, we remember Howard Rollins, an actor once considered the standard of elegance, authority, and intellect on the American screen. Audiences remember him through roles as inspectors, lawyers, or historical figures bearing a dignified demeanor and resolute gaze. In the 80s, for a black actor to achieve leading man status on national television was a hugely symbolic achievement. Howard was not just a star, he was the pride and the role model for an entire community to strive towards. However, it was that very iconic status that became a wall imprisoning his personal freedom. Through the lens of analyzing the pressure of public image, the tragedy of Howard Rollins originated from the fact that he was not allowed to fail, nor was he allowed to carry flaws. When his health began showing signs of depletion and he had to face the truth about his illness, Howard chose to build a wall of absolute secrecy. His greatest fear was not death, but the collapse of an image he had painstakingly built. I deeply understand his pain. Having to brace himself to appear strong before the camera while his body was withering day by day was a fierce erosion, both physically and mentally. When he could no longer continue to hide it, he quietly withdrew from Hollywood, giving up the halo to live his final days in seclusion. The decision to conceal the true cause until the very last minute was a desperate effort to protect his legacy from malicious gossip. For audiences with a wealth of life experience, the life of Howard Rollins is a story deeply imbued with sorrow about the dual nature of fame. He excellently fulfilled the role of a gentleman on the silver screen, but was stripped of the right to live true to the weaknesses of an ordinary human being. His quiet passing is a reminder that sometimes the crown of fame is precisely the tightening headband squeezing the life out of an artist. Max Robinson. Closing our third segment is Max Robinson, a highly unique historical figure. He was not a singer or an actor, but the first black national news anchor in America. With a warm baritone voice, calmness, and an erudite demeanor, Max broke down the most solid racial barriers in the broadcast journalism industry. Audiences nationwide looked up to him as a symbol of truth, fairness, and transparency. He spent his entire youth confronting prejudice, bravely delivering the most truthful information to millions of American families every evening. Yet the most ironic and bitter part of fate fell exactly upon the man representing that truth. He had to use the rest of his life to hide a truth about himself. Let us analyze this psychological paradox. Upon discovering he carried the epidemic of the era, Max understood better than anyone the destructive power of the media. He knew that if this truth were publicized, the entire prestigious career he had traded blood and tears for would be covered by stigmatizing labels. The man who once loudly read news that shook the world now had to quietly take pills in dark corners and offer evasive reasons to step away from the screen. I assess that the pain of Max Robinson is the pain of a pioneer carrying far too many heavy responsibilities on his shoulders. His refusal to publicize his illness until his passing was not cowardice, but a final protection of the honor and values he represented. To audiences who always value honesty, Max's journey leaves an unceasing remorse. He spent his whole life dedicating himself to the truth of humanity, but could not live with his own truth. His legacy is great, but the price paid for that greatness was ultimate loneliness, the saddest news bulletin that he had to suppress himself, never daring to broadcast. Gene Anthony Ray. Moving to the 16th position, we remember Gene Anthony Ray, the talented dancer with explosive energy who breathed life into the smash hit film and television series Fame. Gene was not a formally trained dancer from prestigious academies. He stepped right out from the breath of the streets, bringing with him wildness, passion, and a desire to assert himself. Every dance step of Gene's did not just show off technique, but was an absolute release of energy from a free soul. He represented the grand dreams of young people who did not have a perfect starting point, but possessed innate talent. However, behind those powerful spins and radiant smiles was a personal life full of bumpy turns. When encountering difficulties regarding direction and having to face declining health, Gene chose a highly evasive approach. Through the lens of psychological analysis, his keeping his medical condition a secret from even his most loved ones reflects an extreme level of self-respect. I assess that Gene yearned to be remembered as a symbol of fierce vitality, an always burning flame, rather than someone in need of pity. He feared that if the truth were revealed, people would no longer look at him with the admiring eyes meant for an artist, but with the hesitant eyes meant for a patient. The downward slide in his final years and the quiet passing of Gene Anthony Ray is a sorrowful low note in the music sheet of his career. To audiences who have experienced the peak period and understand the fear of losing one's identity, his story carries an echo full of regret. Gene used every effort to maintain the image of a warrior on stage, but forgot that he himself also needed a place to lean on. His legacy is a costly lesson. The greatest resilience is sometimes not hiding one's weaknesses, but having the courage to allow loved ones to protect you when the storm hits. Ronnie Dyson. In the 17th position is Ronnie Dyson, a vocalist who once thrilled Broadway audiences through the iconic musical Hair. He possessed a soaring, crystal-clear voice that was also full of yearning and torment. Ronnie's songs not only topped the music charts, but also became melodies tied to the youth of an entire generation. In his most brilliant period, he was a familiar face on major stages national television and was highly rated by industry professionals for his ability to convey emotion. Yet the cruelty of the rule of elimination in the entertainment industry has never been lenient with anyone, and Ronnie Dyson was no exception. As new music trends took the throne and his image began to gradually disappear from the media, his career fell into a state of stagnation. The peak of the tragedy was when his health began to weaken. Let us analyze the silence of the entertainment system in the face of this circumstance. The fact that he had to quietly leave tours and fight the illness on his own amidst the media's indifference is a highly bitter image. I understand the ultimate loneliness of someone who once stood at the peak of glory, now having to count their final days in a quiet room. The passing of Ronnie Dyson in the early 90s did not seem to create a ripple large enough to awaken the attention of public opinion at the time. There were no grand memorial services, no worthy tribute articles. For you, the audience who always value silent contributions, the story of Ronnie Dyson leaves an aching question about humanity. A person who used his voice to soothe the hearts of so many, but did not receive a warm response when he needed it most. His life is a reminder that fame may just be a flash of lightning, but human compassion and gratitude are what must be preserved eternally. Carl Bean. Next is an incredibly special figure, Carl Bean, who was active not only as a singer, but also as an immensely compassionate minister. With the hit I Was Born This Way, he created a shockwave in both the music and religious communities. In an era where differences in sexual orientation were still considered a taboo, even fiercely condemned by many sects, Carl Bean stepped into the light using music to connect faith and the truth of his identity. He was a courageous phenomenon, spreading the message that the love of the Supreme Being is for everyone without discrimination or exclusion. Through the lens of analyzing the role of a spiritual guide, deciding to abandon the path of commercial music to found an inclusive religious organization was a great transformation for Carl Bean. When the epidemic struck, instead of seeking protection for himself, he turned his church into a safe haven for abandoned faiths. However, behind the solidness of a minister, Carl also carried within him the same physical pain as his parishioners. Keeping his personal health condition a secret to continue being a spiritual anchor for the community was a boundless sacrifice. I deeply respect this selflessness. He understood that if the captain appeared weak, those clinging to him would also collapse. The life of Carl Bean is a magnificent epic about the combination of art, faith, and practical social action. To audiences with deep faith, his journey carries a wonderfully philosophical meaning. He did not let outdated dogmas block love for his fellow human beings. His passing left a massive legacy of tolerance. Carl Bean proved that a great artist is not just someone who creates hits on the charts, but someone who knows how to use their influence to soothe pain, erase prejudice, and open doors of salvation for the most desperate souls. Kenny Green. Closing this fourth segment is Kenny Green, a talented music producer and the lead vocalist of the group Intro. In the early 90s, Kenny emerged as a phenomenon with top-tier songwriting abilities, standing behind a series of smash hits for contemporary R&B stars. He possessed a sophisticated, sharp musical mindset and a sweet voice capable of touching the deepest emotional chords. In his early 20s, Kenny held a brilliant future in his hands, promising to become one of the top music production moguls. However, behind that dazzling success, Kenny's personal life was a maze full of internal struggles. Through the lens of analyzing the pressure of expectations, having to maintain the image of a standard R&B male god made him unable to live true to his real self. When the disease silently attacked, Kenny had to shoulder a far too massive secret on his own. The health collapse in the recording studio was an inevitable consequence of a spirit suppressed for too long. The confession about his sexual orientation and medical condition in a rare interview before his passing was a final effort to be freed from lies. I deeply empathize with his quote, "The fear of death is not as scary as having to continue living a life that is not your own." The passing of Kenny Green at the age of 32 is an immeasurable loss to the music industry. The fact that some record labels turned their backs and refused to re-release his products after the truth was announced is bitter proof of the entertainment industry's pragmatism. To audiences who always feel sorrow for short-lived talents, Kenny's story leaves an unceasing remorse. He spent his entire youth writing beautiful love songs for the world, but could not write a complete ending for himself. His musical legacy lives on forever, but the price paid for an authentic life is a costly lesson about the harshness of social prejudice. Billy Wright. Moving to the 21st position, we turn back the dust-covered pages of the 1950s to talk about Billy Wright, one of the true architects of rock and roll music. Long before the world knew of unconventional icons, Billy boldly stepped onto the stage with an ahead-of-his-time look, elaborate makeup, a glamorous performance style, and a proudly feminine aura. Few know that he was the direct inspiration shaping the legendary style of Little Richard later on. Billy was a man ahead of his time, using his own artistic life to challenge the strictest limits of a conservative society. Yet history is often very cruel to those who pave the way. Through the lens of analyzing the entertainment industry's rule of elimination, the fact that Billy dared to live true to his identity in an era where stereotypical masculinity was considered the only measure for survival turned him into an outsider. While the younger generations he himself inspired stepped onto the peak of global fame, the pioneer was gradually pushed into the dark. The peak of sorrow was when he fell to the epidemic of the century in the early 90s. The record labels that once profited from his voice simultaneously turned their backs. No one reached out a hand to save or spoke up to protect a legend taking his last breaths. The quiet passing of Billy Wright in a tiny apartment without loud memorial services or praising tribute articles is a sad verdict on the ungratefulness of the world. To you, the audience who always values roots, his life carries a poignant message. Society can easily cheer you on when you bring them joy, but is also ready to forget you when you are no longer of use. Billy Wright kindled the most brilliant flame for modern music, but had to endure bone-chilling coldness in his final days, leaving a great legacy, but one full of the scratches of injustice. Keith Barrow, in the 22nd position, is Keith Barrow, a true prince of the 70s and 80s disco soul genre. He possessed a soaring voice, a bright stage presence, and a wide-open future with hits warmly received by the public. More especially, Keith was born into a family heavily marked by history. His mother was Reverend Willie Barrow, one of the most outstanding civil rights activists with massive influence on the community. Looked at from the outside, Keith had everything in his hands: talent, a family launchpad, and the adoration of the public. However, it was that very massive family legacy that became an invisible cage imprisoning the artist's soul. Let us analyze the tear between affection and social face. When Keith discovered he was one of the first victims of the newly blossoming epidemic, he had to face an ultimate fear. In the context of the early 80s, society's lack of understanding about this disease was accompanied by incredibly vicious stigma. For Keith, physical pain was not as scary as the fear of tarnishing the reputation of his great mother and the civil rights movement she was leading. I deeply empathize with his decision to hide his medical condition. He chose to fade away in the dark, canceling all performance schedules to protect the integrity of the values his family represented. The event of Keith passing away in 1983 was kept secret to the maximum level without the presence of top-tier R&B stars nor obituaries in major media outlets. A mother having to swallow her tears to hide the true cause of her son's passing is an immeasurable psychological tragedy. For audiences who are parents, the story of Keith Barrow is a sorrowful reminder. Sometimes the expectations and pressures of protecting a community image become a burden that strips away the right to live true, the right to be weak of the very children we love the most. His passing is a sad rest note, proving that fame is sometimes the barrier separating people from empathy. Wayne Cooper. Closing our entire list of 23 figures is Wayne Cooper, the soaring tenor vocalist and the true soul behind the world-shaking hits of the famous funk band Cameo. Despite possessing an unmistakable voice, playing a decisive role in creating the group's signature mark, ironically, Wayne was never honored on album covers or remembered by face and name by the public. He existed as a faint shadow, a diligent employee standing behind the glamorous coats of the lead singers. That silent sacrifice followed him until the very last days of his life, when he had to make the most cruel choice. Through the lens of analyzing the cruelty of the commercial industry, Wayne's final diary entries expose a heartbreaking truth. "If I tell the truth, I will be kicked out of the group. If I stay silent, I will die alone." That sentence contains the entire helplessness of a human being when weighed against the economic interests of an organization. When his health depleted during a tour, Wayne chose to quietly withdraw, citing personal reasons, so as not to affect Cameo's rising image. I assess that this is an ultimate sacrifice, but also exposes the heartless coldness of the industry. The life of a teammate was ranked behind the survival of the band's brand. The unannounced death of Wayne Cooper in 1984, without a word of tribute, without recognition from the very people who stood on stage with him, is the ultimate injustice. It took many years later for the truth to be accidentally revealed through the accounts of old acquaintances. For audiences who always cherish the value of genuine labor, Wayne's story closes this video with a powerful message. A collective is only truly great when they know how to cherish and protect the most vulnerable individuals within them. Wayne Cooper spent his whole life raising his voice as a background for the brilliance of others, and the oblivion he received in return is the clearest indictment for an entertainment era full of calculation and heartlessness. Closing the journey, looking back at the tear-filled hidden corners of music legends, we hope you have had moments of deep reflection on the value of tolerance and the appreciation for genuine artistic contributions. Wishing you always relaxing, peaceful, and warm moments with your beloved family. If you found this video meaningful, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell to continue accompanying our memory vault. Goodbye, and see you again.